The yellow boot clamped around my tire looked official, government-issued, and impossible to remove. The man in the reflective vest stood with his clipboard demanding $300 in cash. Right now, no cards accepted. No receipts offered. My parking violation? Apparently I had broken some ordinance I had never heard of in a spot I had parked in weekly for years. His badge glinted in the afternoon sun as he stepped closer, voice dropping. "Look, I can make this problem disappear if you just pay now. Otherwise, your car stays here overnight. Tow fees start at dawn." I noticed the small details then, how his vest had no city logo, how his eyes darted toward his unmarked van when I asked too many questions. He had no idea who I was. He had no idea who my family was. He had no idea that the real head of city parking enforcement was about to turn the corner. That is when I realized. He had just attempted to scam the niece of the woman who wrote the actual parking laws. It was supposed to be an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. I had parked my sedan in the same spot I always used when visiting the Oak Ridge Public Library, a quiet side street with no meters, no signs prohibiting parking, and certainly no time limits. I even remembered checking for street cleaning notices before locking my car. The spot was completely legal. I had used it at least 100 times before. 2 hours later, I returned with my books tucked under my arm. The bright splash of yellow caught my eye immediately. From 20 feet away, I could see something was wrong. My steps quickened as I approached my car, disbelief turning to anger. A bulky, industrial-looking boot was clamped around my front driver's side tire. It was yellow, not the standard orange our city used, but most people would not know that difference. A wrinkled piece of paper fluttered under my windshield wiper. I snatched it out, hands trembling slightly. The header read, "Citation, illegal parking with an official-looking seal," but something about it felt off. The paper quality was too light, the print slightly blurry. At the bottom, it listed a fine of $300, payable immediately to avoid towing costs. I scanned the street, my heart racing. That is when I noticed him. Across the road, leaning against a white unmarked van, stood a man in a neon yellow reflective vest. He held a clipboard in one hand and was watching me with calculated interest. Our eyes met briefly, and he straightened up as if preparing for confrontation. I clutched the citation paper and marched across the street, my library books forgotten on the hood of my car. "Excuse me," I called out. "What exactly is this about? I have parked here regularly for years. There are no restrictions on this street." The man stepped forward with practiced confidence. He was middle-aged, with thinning hair and a face that seemed designed to be forgettable. "Ma'am, your vehicle is in violation of City Code 5.7b, obstruction of public right-of-way." His voice carried authority, but something in his delivery sounded rehearsed. "May I see some identification, please?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Which department are you with?" He reached for a badge hanging around his neck. "Local Compliance Services. We contract with the city for overflow parking enforcement." He flashed the badge quickly, not long enough for me to examine it properly. The plastic looked new and shiny, not worn like my aunt's official city credentials. "I have never heard of Local Compliance Services," I said. "And this spot has no restrictions. There are no signs, no meters, nothing." The man sighed, as if dealing with a difficult customer. "New ordinance passed last month. Not all signage has been updated yet, but I can assure you your vehicle is in violation." I looked back at the citation. The font did not match city documents I had seen before. The ordinance number he mentioned, 5.7b, sounded made up. And the payment instructions were bizarre, cash only, payable to the enforcement officer on site or by money order mailed to a P.O. box. "So you expect me to give you $300 in cash, right now with no proper receipt?" I asked, my suspicion growing stronger by the second. He nodded, reaching into his vest pocket. "I can provide a carbon receipt, standard procedure for on-site resolution. Otherwise, the boot stays until full payment plus additional fees is received. Your car will be towed at 7 a.m. tomorrow if not resolved." I noticed more details that did not add up. His van had no city markings, just a magnetic sign that read "Parking Enforcement" with no official seal. The boot itself looked different from the ones I had seen around town. Most importantly, the man could not produce any official city documentation beyond his suspicious badge. I took a deep breath and gave him a small smile. You know what? I think there has been a serious mistake here, and I do not mean on my part. His confident demeanor faltered slightly. Ma'am, the violation is clear. Either pay the fine now or deal with towing costs tomorrow. Your choice. I pulled out my phone casually. Before I decide, I think I need to make a quick call. You just messed with the wrong car, and definitely the wrong driver. The fake officer shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable with my sudden confidence. Look, I am trying to help you out here. Pay the fine now and I can remove the boot immediately. No towing, no additional fees. I nodded slowly, pretending to consider his offer. That sounds reasonable, but I would like to verify some information first. Would you mind if I step aside to make a quick call? I just need to check my bank balance. He seemed relieved by my apparent compliance. Sure, but do not take too long. I have other violations to process. I walked a few steps away, just out of earshot, but still close enough to keep an eye on him. My fingers flew across my phone's screen, finding the contact I needed. Aunt Margaret Work. My aunt had been with the City Parking Enforcement Division for 23 years. For the last 7, she had served as the director of parking operations. If anyone could spot a parking scam, it was her. She answered on the second ring. Margaret Sullivan speaking. Aunt Margaret, it is me, I said quietly, turning my back to the man. I need your help. Someone put a boot on my car near the library, but something feels very wrong about it. He is demanding cash on the spot. Her voice sharpened immediately. Describe the officer and the boot. I gave her a quick rundown of everything. The yellow boot instead of the standard city orange, the unmarked van, the flimsy ID badge, and the cash-only demand. That is definitely not one of ours, she said firmly. We never accept cash payments in the field, ever, and we do not have any contractors called local compliance services. This is a scam. Keep him there. I am sending officers right now. Do not confront him directly, just stall. I am 5 minutes away. Relief flooded through me. Thank you, I will keep him talking. And take photos if you can do it discreetly, she added before hanging up. I turned back to the man with a carefully composed expression. Sorry about that, just checking my accounts. Before I pay, can you tell me more about how this works? I want to understand the process. He seemed pleased by my apparent cooperation. Simple procedure. I remove the boot once payment is confirmed. You get a receipt, case closed. And the boot itself, I continued casually, pulling out my phone as if checking my banking app, but actually opening the camera. Does it have a city registry number or something for my records? His eyes narrowed slightly. The boot number is logged in our system. You do not need that information. I nodded, taking a quick photo of the boot while pretending to check something on my phone. And this new ordinance, 5-7B, was it? Where can I read more about that, just so I do not violate it again? He cleared his throat. City website has all ordinances listed, now about the payment. My phone buzzed with a text. Aunt Margaret had sent a photo of the standard city boot, heavy-duty orange with a serial number clearly visible on the side, and the city seal embossed on the locking mechanism. Nothing like the cheap yellow contraption on my wheel. One more question, I said, looking up from my phone. This might sound silly, but are you sure this is an official city-issued boot? I thought city boots were orange. The change in his demeanor was immediate and telling. His face flushed and his eyes darted to his van. Different divisions use different equipment, he said quickly, but his confident tone had evaporated. Look, if you cannot pay now, I need to move on to other violations. I will just leave the boot in place. He began gathering his clipboard and papers hastily, stuffing them into a worn messenger bag. His hands trembled slightly. Actually, I said calmly, I think we should wait just a few more minutes. There is someone I would like you to meet. He glanced nervously up the street, sensing something had shifted. I have other appointments. If you change your mind about paying, the instructions are on the citation. But it was too late for him to make a smooth exit. The unmistakable sound of an official city vehicle turning the corner filled the quiet street. His face went pale as the white SUV with the city seal and parking enforcement emblazoned on its side pulled up to the curb. The official parking enforcement vehicle came to a stop directly behind us, its light bar flashing silently. My aunt stepped out with practiced precision, every movement deliberate and authoritative. She wore the full city uniform, dark blue pants, light blue button-up shirt with official patches, and a badge that caught the sunlight. Unlike the flimsy plastic ID the man had flashed, hers was metal, substantial, and unquestionably real. Two additional officers emerged from the vehicle, positioning themselves strategically to block any potential escape route to the unmarked van. The fake officer froze in place, sweat beading visibly on his forehead despite the mild temperature. "Good afternoon," my aunt said, her voice carrying the weight of her position. She did not look at me, maintaining complete professionalism. "I am Director Sullivan with City Parking Enforcement. May I see your identification and authorization paperwork, please?" The man swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. "There seems to be some confusion here," he began, his voice suddenly less commanding than it had been minutes before. "I am with local compliance services. We have a contract with the city." My aunt extended her hand, palm up. "Your credentials, please." With visible reluctance, he produced the badge he had shown me earlier. My aunt did not even touch it, merely glanced at it before looking directly into his eyes. "This identification is not valid," she stated flatly. "The city has no contract with any organization called Local Compliance Services. You are impersonating a parking enforcement officer and installing unauthorized devices on private vehicles." His face drained of color. "I can explain." "You can explain to the police," she interrupted. "Officer Jenkins, please remove the unauthorized boot from my niece's vehicle. Officer Martinez, secure the suspect's van. We will need to inventory any additional illegal boots or fraudulent citations." The reality of his situation appeared to hit him all at once. His shoulders slumped, and the clipboard he had been clutching like a shield dropped to his side. "It was just a few cars," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "People usually just pay. No one ever calls to verify." My aunt's expression remained impassive. "How many individuals have you defrauded with this scheme?" He stared at the ground. "Maybe 20, 25, just in this area, started a few weeks ago." People began to gather on the sidewalk, drawn by the official vehicle and the unfolding drama. Someone was recording the scene on their phone. Another person pointed at the man and exclaimed loudly, "That is him. He put one of those things on my car last Tuesday." Officer Jenkins approached after examining the boot on my tire. "It is a cheap knockoff, Director, no professional grade at all, could damage the wheel if removed incorrectly." He held up a set of bolt cutters. "I will have it off in a minute." My aunt nodded and turned back to the impersonator. "We are detaining you until police arrive. Impersonating a city official is a serious offense. So is fraud, extortion, and tampering with private property." The man did not resist as Officer Martinez guided him to the official vehicle. The crowd had grown larger, and murmurs rippled through it. "He got my mother for $200 last week," someone called out. "Said he would tow her car if she did not pay on the spot." My aunt addressed the gathering crowd with calm authority. "If anyone here has encountered this individual previously or paid fines to him, please remain on site. We will need your statements." Legitimate city parking officials never demand cash payment in the field and always provide official city receipts with full contact information. As the officers secured the scene, my aunt finally turned to me. There was a glint of satisfaction in her eyes, though her professional demeanor never slipped. "Are you all right?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Thanks to you, he picked the wrong car today." "Indeed he did," she replied, the barest hint of a smile crossing her face. "Indeed he did." With the fake officer secured in the back of the official vehicle, my aunt established a makeshift command center on the sidewalk. Officer Jenkins had successfully removed the bootleg boot from my tire, handling it with gloved hands as potential evidence. Curious onlookers formed a semicircle around us, many stepping forward with stories of their own encounters. My aunt pulled out her tablet and created an impromptu reporting station. She was no longer just my aunt, she was Director Sullivan, a consummate professional managing a situation with serious implications for public trust. "Start from the beginning," she instructed the detained man, who now sat deflated on a bench under Officer Martinez's watchful eye. "Where did you get the equipment? How long has this been happening?" The fake officer, whose real name turned out to be Dennis Mercer, cracked under her steady gaze. "I found the boot on an online auction site," he admitted, staring at his hands. "Paid $87 for it. The vest came from a surplus store. Anyone can buy them." My aunt made careful notes on her tablet. "And the citations, the fake identification badge." He shrugged, a gesture of defeat. "Made them on my laptop. Found a template online, modified it, printed them at home on my inkjet printer. The badge is just laminated paper with a clip." "What made you target this area specifically?" she pressed. "No cameras," he said simply. "Residential streets near public buildings. People are in a hurry. They do not want the hassle of a boot or tow. Most pay without question." My aunt's expression remained professional, but I could see the anger simmering beneath her calm exterior. "How much have you collected through this scheme?" He hesitated, then mumbled, "About $4,000, maybe more." A collective gasp came from the gathered crowd. Officer Jenkins looked up from his evidence collection. "Director, I found 7 more boots in his van, also several rolls of citations and what appears to be a cash box." My aunt nodded grimly. "Document everything. The police will need a complete inventory." She turned back to her tablet and pulled up the city's official records. "Mr. Mercer, just to confirm, you claim to represent local compliance services, correct?" She turned the screen toward him, showing a database search. "No such entity exists in our city contractor database. No permits have been issued to any private parking enforcement company matching that description." His silence was confirmation enough. The crowd had grown, with more people stepping forward to share encounters. An elderly woman with silver hair recounted how she had paid this man $150 the previous week. "I was so scared my car would be towed," she said, voice shaking. "That money was for my prescriptions." A young college student described a similar experience. "He told me it was a new student parking regulation. I had to borrow money from friends to pay him." With each testimony, the scope of the fraud became clearer. My aunt methodically recorded each account, her face growing more determined with each story. "The city legal team will be building a case," she explained to the victims. "We will need formal statements from each of you, and we will be working to identify others who may have been defrauded." She turned to me as the police cruiser finally arrived to take custody of Dennis Mercer. "This is much bigger than one man with a fake boot," she said quietly. "This is about public trust. When people cannot tell legitimate authority from imposters, the entire system breaks down." I nodded, watching as the police officers escorted Mercer to their vehicle. "How many others do you think fell for it?" "Too many," she replied, "but this ends today." Officer Jenkins approached with my car keys. "Your vehicle is clear, ma'am. No damage to the wheel, fortunately. These knockoff boots can sometimes scratch the rim, but yours looks fine." I thanked him and took the keys, still processing the afternoon's events. The yellow boot now sat in an evidence bag, its cheap metal looking even more obviously fake under scrutiny. As the crowd slowly dispersed and the police took statements, my aunt put a hand on my shoulder. "You did well today," she said. "Many people would have just paid to avoid trouble. You questioned something that seemed wrong." I smiled at her. I had a good teacher. She nodded toward my now boot-free car. "Get home safely, and tomorrow we start making sure this never happens to anyone else again." The story broke on local news the very next evening. "Parking enforcement scam exposed," the headline declared, followed by footage of Dennis Mercer being escorted to a police cruiser. My aunt appeared on screen in her official capacity, explaining the situation with clear, measured words. "The city parking division wants to ensure citizens know how to identify legitimate parking enforcement officers," she told the camera. Official personnel always wear city-issued uniforms with proper identification. They never request cash payments in the field, and all official citations include multiple payment options and an appeals process. Sitting in my living room, watching her command the screen, I felt a surge of pride. This was my aunt, not just a bureaucrat but a guardian of public trust. Within 48 hours, the city launched a comprehensive awareness campaign. My aunt moved with remarkable efficiency, mobilizing resources across departments. Bright orange flyers appeared at every public parking lot and major intersection, clearly illustrating the differences between legitimate citations and fraudulent ones. The city website featured a prominent alert on its homepage, complete with photographs of official boots, badges, and vehicles. "We need to turn this incident into an opportunity for education," my aunt explained when she called to enlist my help. "People trust uniforms and official-looking documents instinctively. We need to change that reflexive trust into informed verification." I volunteered immediately, helping to distribute informational materials throughout neighborhoods where Mercer had operated. We created a simple pamphlet titled "Verify Before You Pay" that outlined the red flags citizens should watch for. My aunt insisted on including clear photographs comparing the genuine city boot, bright orange, substantial with visible serial numbers, against the counterfeit yellow version Mercer had used. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. The hotline my aunt established for potential victims rang constantly. Within a week, over 30 additional people came forward with stories of paying Mercer's fraudulent fines. The estimated total of his scheme climbed past $6,000. Local television stations invited my aunt to appear on morning shows, where she patiently explained proper parking enforcement procedures. "If you are ever uncertain," she repeated in each interview, "call the number on the back of any legitimate citation. Real enforcement officers expect and welcome verification." At the next city council meeting, my aunt presented a comprehensive report on the incident and her department's response. Council members listened attentively as she outlined the scope of the fraud and the steps taken to prevent similar schemes. "Director Sullivan's prompt action represents the highest standard of public service," the council president declared. "Her department's transparent response has helped restore confidence in our parking enforcement system." I sat in the audience, watching as my aunt received a standing ovation from both the council and citizens. She acknowledged the recognition with professional grace, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. This was why she had dedicated her career to public service, not for accolades, but for the opportunity to protect people. After the meeting, a local news crew approached us as we exited City Hall. The reporter recognized me from information my aunt had shared during the investigation. "You are the one who first identified the scam, correct?" the reporter asked, microphone extended toward me. "How did you know something was wrong?" I glanced at my aunt, who nodded encouragingly. "The details did not add up," I explained. "The incorrect color of the boot, the demand for cash payment, the lack of proper identification. But mostly, I knew who to call for verification. My aunt has taught me to question anything that seems suspicious." "And that call led to uncovering a scam that had victimized dozens of people," the reporter summarized. "Any advice for viewers?" I thought for a moment. Trust your instincts if something feels off, and know your resources. Every legitimate authority can be verified. The segment aired that evening, ending with my quote that the reporter seemed particularly fond of. "He picked the wrong car, but more importantly, he picked the wrong aunt." That simple phrase resonated with viewers. It captured something essential about accountability and the power of knowledge. By the end of the week, calls to the verification hotline had doubled. People were not just reporting past scams, they were actively checking the legitimacy of current citations. My aunt called it the best outcome we could have hoped for during our weekly dinner. "People are paying attention now. They are asking questions. That is how we prevent the next scam before it starts." The county courthouse stood imposing and formal, its marble columns gleaming in the morning light. Inside, courtroom 7B was packed beyond capacity. Many of Mercer's victims had come to witness justice firsthand, including the elderly woman who had spent her medication money on a fraudulent fine. Local media occupied the back row, notebooks and tablets ready. My aunt sat in the front row, immaculate in her official uniform. As director of parking enforcement, her presence carried symbolic weight. I sat beside her, feeling somewhat out of place in this formal setting yet determined to see the process through. Dennis Mercer looked diminished in his ill-fitting suit, a stark contrast to the confident figure who had demanded cash while standing over my booted tire. When called before the judge, he shuffled forward, eyes downcast. "How do you plead to the charges of impersonating a city official, fraud, and extortion?" the judge asked, her voice echoing through the hushed courtroom. "Guilty, Your Honor," Mercer replied, barely audible. His public defender stepped forward with a prepared statement. "My client acknowledges his wrongdoing, Your Honor. He was facing significant financial hardship following job loss and medical expenses. While this does not excuse his actions, it provides context for his desperate choices." The judge listened impassively, then turned to the prosecutor. "The court will hear from the victims before sentencing." One by one, people stepped forward to describe their encounters with Mercer. The young college student explained how he had missed a crucial exam waiting for a tow that never came. A single mother described borrowing money from neighbors to pay the fake fine, fearing she would lose her only transportation to work. The elderly woman spoke of the anxiety that lingered weeks after the incident, how she now questioned every official document she received. Each testimony built upon the last, creating a comprehensive picture of harm that went beyond financial loss. Mercer had damaged something intangible but vital, public trust in legitimate institutions. When all victims had spoken, the judge addressed Mercer directly. "Stand up, Mr. Mercer." He rose slowly, visibly trembling. "The crimes you have committed are particularly concerning to this court," she stated firmly. "You did not simply take money through deception. You wrapped your fraud in the appearance of legitimate authority. You exploited the public's trust in city officials and institutions." Mercer nodded slightly, accepting the rebuke. "Such violations erode the foundation of civic order," the judge continued. "When citizens cannot distinguish real authority from imposters, the entire system is compromised." She delivered his sentence with deliberate precision. Full restitution to all identified victims, 5 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, specifically in public education about fraud prevention, and a suspended jail term that would be immediately imposed if he engaged in any similar activities in the future. As the gavel fell, signifying the end of the proceedings, my aunt leaned toward me. "It is not over," she whispered. "Sentencing him is just the beginning. We need systemic change." In the weeks that followed, my aunt channeled the momentum from the case into concrete action. She drafted a comprehensive reform proposal for city parking enforcement protocols. The document addressed every vulnerability Mercer had exploited, from identification verification to equipment standardization. "The current system relies too heavily on visual recognition," she explained as we worked late in her office, refining the proposal. "We need digital verification methods that anyone can access instantly." Her proposal included scannable QR codes on official booths that would link to real-time city databases, digital identification cards for all enforcement officers that could be verified through secure portals, and a comprehensive public education campaign about citizen rights during parking enforcement actions. I helped her refine the language, making the technical specifications accessible to council members and the public alike. We created visual aids showing the proposed changes in action, before and after scenarios that demonstrated how much more secure the new system would be. When she presented the proposal to the City Council, their support was unanimous. The budget was approved immediately, with implementation set to begin within 30 days. "This is how institutions rebuild trust," one council member commented, "by acknowledging vulnerabilities and addressing them transparently." As we left City Hall that evening, my aunt smiled, a rare, full smile that reached her eyes. "From one fake boot to comprehensive reform," she said. Sometimes the worst incidents lead to the best solutions. 6 months passed, bringing subtle but meaningful changes to our city. The new parking enforcement protocols were fully implemented, with every officer equipped with verifiable digital identification. Official booths now featured QR codes that anyone could scan to confirm legitimacy. The city's parking app included a verification feature, allowing citizens to check the status of any citation instantly. Most importantly, no new scams had been reported. The combination of public awareness and enhanced security measures had closed the loopholes that Mercer had exploited. My aunt had become something of a local celebrity, recognized not just for catching a scammer, but for using the incident to create lasting improvements. Seniors in particular seemed to have adopted her as their champion. When her patrol car drove through neighborhoods, people often waved or gave thumbs-up signals. Children recognized her uniform from the educational videos that now played in schools, teaching students about legitimate authority versus scams. On a crisp autumn morning, I visited her at City Hall, bringing coffee and her favorite pastries. Her office reflected her methodical nature, neat, organized with everything in its proper place. But one wall had changed since my last visit. Framed news clippings now hung beside her certificates and commendations. The centerpiece was the front-page story from the day after Mercer's sentencing, headlined, "Fake Parking Officer Busted by Niece of the Real Deal." She followed my gaze to the article and chuckled. Not exactly how I planned to make headlines in my career, but it worked out well enough. I set the coffee on her desk. "The department should thank me. I practically launched your public relations campaign." "By getting your car booted illegally." She raised an eyebrow, the familiar dry humor evident in her voice. "I prefer to think of it as civic investigation," I replied, taking a seat across from her. She sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "The follow-up report came in yesterday. Restitution payments to victims are now complete. Mercer has completed half his community service hours, speaking at senior centers about how to identify scams." "Poetic justice," I observed. "Indeed," she set down her cup. "But the real victory is not what happened to him, it is what happened with our systems." She pulled up a chart on her computer, turning the screen so I could see. Verification checks of parking citations had increased by 300% since the incident. Citizen reports of suspicious activity had risen similarly. The data showed a community that had become more aware, more engaged, and consequently more protected. "People are not just accepting uniforms and official-looking papers anymore," she explained. "They are asking questions, seeking verification. That is the real change." After our coffee, we walked to the public library, the very spot where Mercer had targeted my car. A small but significant addition now stood near the parking area, an information kiosk with clear photographs of legitimate parking enforcement identification, proper citations, and official equipment. A simple instruction at the bottom read, "When in doubt, verify. Call 550-54237. My aunt ran her hand over the laminated surface. "Worth every penny of the budget. We have installed 37 of these throughout the city." "Do you think we will see another Mercer?" I asked. She considered for a moment. "Scammers adapt. They find new angles. But we have closed this particular door, and more importantly, we have changed how people respond to authority claims. That makes every potential scam harder to execute." We strolled back toward our cars, the autumn leaves crunching beneath our feet. By coincidence or habit, I had parked in almost the exact spot where Mercer had placed his fake boot on my tire months before. The memory still carried a sting, but now it was tempered with satisfaction. As if reading my thoughts, my aunt glanced at my legally parked car and then at her watch. 1 hour and 17 minutes in this spot, she noted professionally. Well within any conceivable limit. I laughed. "Are you officially clearing me, Director Sullivan?" She straightened her uniform jacket with mock seriousness. "Officially, your parking status is compliant with all city ordinances." Just then, her radio crackled. An officer was requesting assistance with a routine matter across town. She acknowledged the call and turned to me with an apologetic smile. "Duty calls," I said, understanding. She nodded but paused before heading to her vehicle. You know, I have been thinking. Perhaps we should develop a citizen education program, training people to spot these scams before they evolve. Would you be interested in helping develop materials? Absolutely, I replied without hesitation. She smiled and gestured toward my car. Park legally, and I will see you Thursday for dinner to discuss details. I gave her an exaggerated salute. Always, Director. As she drove away, I looked at my car, parked properly, boot-free, in a spot I now knew was completely legitimate. Somewhere across the city, other drivers were becoming more aware, more informed, asking better questions. All because one day a fake parking officer had chosen the wrong car to boot, and definitely the wrong niece to scam.